Time to look at German Infantry Anti-Tank Tactics of 1941 and 1942 on the Eastern Front. This means close-range anti-tank tactics. No anti-tank guns, no flak. Just a bunch of soldiers fighting against T-34s, KV-1s and KV-2s in close quarter with mines, smoke grenades, Molotov-Cocktails, axes and hand grenades. This video is mainly based on primary sources, namely Anhalte zur Ausbildung der Panzerzerstörtrupps. It was written by a motorized infantry division, which was one of the top tier German divisions. Note that motorized divisions were later called Panzergrenadierdivisionen. If you want to know more about it, check out this video, which might come with some surprising insights. Anyway, the units were called Panzerzerstörtrupps, which means tank destruction teams. Their mission was to destroy the tanks in close combat. To quote directly, Aufgabe des Panzerzerstörtrupps ist die Bekämpfung und Vernichtung von Panzern ausschließlich mit Nahkampfmitteln. Which means, mission of the tank destruction team is the combating and destruction of tanks exclusively with close-range weapons. Additionally, such tank destruction teams should provide a moral boost to the regular units and show that even without armor-piercing weapons a tank can be disposed. It is noted that members of the team must be convinced of several points. First, the main effect of a tank is a moral one. It affects the troops more due to its appearance and less due to its weapons. Second, that the tank becomes less dangerous for a single man the closer it gets to him. And third, that a tank can be easily defeated if it is forced to stop or turn in terrain like villages, woods and snow. Now I'm not sure if I particularly agree with these assessments, but anyway. What is very interesting here is that the moral effect of tanks had is referred to as Panzerschreck, namely tank scares or tank terror, which in this case means scare or terror of the tank. Yet the word got a different meaning later when the German version of the bazooka was named Panzerschreck, which I find particularly interesting because in less than 2 years the meaning of the word switched completely. Now, before we dive into the tactic itself, let's look at the organization and equipment of such a unit. Note that this is mainly a recommendation, and in general organizations on the front were usually subject to change due to losses or other necessities. Well, a Panzerzerstörtrupp was organized in 4 groups, namely a leader with messenger, a security team, a smoke team and a demolition team. The security team or Sicherungstrupp consists of 1 to 3 riflemen with submachine guns or rifles. Their main job was to observe and secure the demolition team. In some cases they would assist by firing at the vision slits of the tanks to reduce visibility. Additionally, their job was to neutralize disembarking enemy tank crews. The smoke team or Nebeltrupp, which literally means fog team, consists of 1 to 2 riflemen, equipped with smoke grenades. According to the instructions, these should be used only in exceptional cases because the demolition team should use cover and surprise as the main means to achieve the objective. After all, smoke may conceal you, but it also gives away that you are there somewhere, and not to mention that the wind can change. Finally, the demolition team or Sprengtrupp consists of 2 to 4 riflemen, equipped with various means, but more on this later. Note that the team would rarely act in unity and usually at most 2 men would engage 1 tank. In terms of equipment, the instruction notes that this is just a rough guideline and it should be adapted according to the available means. Now it was recommended to have 4 to 8 mines, namely the Tellermine 35, which means plate mine, and was the common German anti-tank mine at the time. 1 to 2 Geballte Ladungen, which is a grenade bundle. Note that the Geballte Ladung was basically 1 stick grenade with 6 other stick grenade heads bound together. 6 to 8 Molotov-Cocktails, which the German called Brandflasche, literally meaning incendiary bottle. 1 cherry can, 6 to 8 hand grenades, 2 to 4 smoke grenades, which the German called Nebelkerzen, literally meaning fog candles. And finally, although it is not noted explicitly in the instructions, an axe, but more on this later. Since knowing the strengths and weaknesses of the enemy's capability is central, there was also some basic information on enemy tanks. What is really interesting here that this only covers the T-34, KV-1 and KV-2, which is an indicator that those were the tanks that really troubled the Germans. Which is quite understandably, because regular infantry divisions in 1941 and early 1942 often had no dedicated long-range weapons that could consistently destroy those tanks. In general, it is noted that the biggest drawbacks of all heavy Soviet tanks is the limited visibility. This is also reflected by the fact that the Germans installed their commander's cupola in captured T-34s. Now what is noted as particularly dangerous were the observation slits and opening for small arms. Note that this image shows the side of a late war T-34-85 from 1944. This image was taken at the Park of Military History in Puka, Slovenia. Special thanks to my patrons here for financing this trip and others. Now, the T-34 is noted to be especially fast and maneuverable compared to other heavy tanks. Hence, at least the writer of the instruction considered the T-34 a heavy tank. Which brings us to the KW-1, which was called by the German 44 Panzer or KW-1, because basically what in Russian to English names is a V is a W in Russian to German names. Now, one important detail about the KW-1 was the open area between the hull and the turret, and it was noted that it was a good spot to place explosives, which was also present at the KW-2, which was called 52 Panzer or KW-2. And I will quote now directly from the instructions. Schwerfällig und unbeweglich, Wirkung mehr moralisch, Waffenwirkung sehr gering. Which means sluggish and immovable, effect mostly moral, weapon effect very low. Sadly, it is not explained why they considered the weapon effect very low. But I assume that the 152mm gun was probably rather useless against fast-moving infantry at close ranges. After all, the KV-2 was built as a bunker buster, and those usually don't move unless you had a bit too much vodka. Now, since we got the basics covered, let's look at the variety of measures and tactics used to destroy these tanks. The manual is extensively on the usage of mines, giving many different possibilities to use them. One of the more sophisticated ones is the Bewegliche Minensperre or Movable mine barrier, which is basically a plank with several mines on it. But as the maximum distance between the mine was 60 cm, this barrier is used in locations where a tank has to pass. The main goal is to immobilize the tank. But the question is, how does it work? Well, the plank with the mines should be put in good concealed position. A stick on one side provided a lever, and a 20-meter rope was used to turn the plank, while the operator was hiding as far away as possible. When the tank drove up to a range of 10 meters, the operator would pull and go into full cover. If the tank hit the mine, the other mines would usually also explode. It is noted that the tank would be immobilized, and in most cases the hull would also be penetrated. A similar version was a slide or pull mine, which didn't use a plank and attached mines directly to a rope. Now, there was another version which I consider the poor man's version of the mine barrier. In this case, a single mine was attached to the end of a 4-meter plank, and the soldier would put the plank right under the tracks or where he thought the tank was moving. There were also some other variations, like using a rope to trigger the mine or just sliding or throwing a mine under the tracks. Yet the mine could also be used as an explosive charge and placing it on top of the tank, ideally between the turret and the hull, which was the recommended spot for the KV-1 and KV-2. This was also the area where a satchel charge or grenade bundle should be placed. Now, according to a report from May 1942 by the 251st Infantry Division, the use of a grenade bundle on top of a KV-2 turret didn't prevent the turret from continuing to move. Yet 2 mines placed between the turret and the hull ripped off the turret and threw it 5 meters away. Now, the Geballte Ladung grenade bundle could also be thrown, but as you can see, the main issue is that it would probably bounce off. Hence, it was recommended to put the bundle into a sandbag. Now, you likely want to know why I listed an axe. Well, probably the most daring attack was to jump onto the tank and then bash open the ventilation mesh with an axe in order to throw a grenade inside. Again, I can only provide images of a late war T-34. Here, yet from other images and blueprints that I saw, it seems that these parts were mostly identical with earlier versions of the T-34. Note that these images are from the previously mentioned museum in Buka, Slovenia, and the Bunker Museum am Wurzenpass in Carinthia, Austria. Thanks to the staff of both museums to let me take these photos and use them in my videos. Now, probably the best known infantry anti-tank weapon is the Molotov-Cocktail. It is noted that it is best used against the ventilation area, vision slits, optics, and insufficiently closed hatches. Well, we all know what a Molotov-Cocktail is, but if you really want to set something on fire, well, use a jerry can with a grenade attached to it. Because what could possibly go wrong with that? It is noted in the instruction that it should be placed on the top of the tank hull. Now, in order to blind the tank crew, a smoke grenade could be used. The problem with them is that if the tank moves or the wind changes, well, they don't really work anymore. Thus, it is recommended to use a rope with a smoke grenade and a counterwind on the other side, which should be thrown around the barrel of the tank. Additionally, it is noted that blankets, dirt and other measures can be used to obscure the vision slits and other optics. Now, to finish this off, 2 short examples on how a complete Panzerzerstörtrupp could have acted in coordination against one tank. The first scenario assumes that a Trent drove on a mine and was immobilized. The security team watches the tank and engages the crew should it leave the tank. Meanwhile, the smoke team is waiting for a signal from the demolition team to obscure the tank's vision. Once this is achieved, the demolition team moves in and places the explosives to destroy the tank. The other scenario is waiting for the tank to close in as much as possible, and then the smoke team throws a smoke grenade with a counterweight that attaches around the tank barrel. Meanwhile, the security team observes the tanks and the surroundings, while the demolition team moves in. As always, sources are linked in the description. Special thanks to Max Ravenclaw and Justin for helping me out on this video. Now if you liked my video, you might want to take a look at US Army anti-tank tactics in World War II, or maybe a comparison between World War I and World War II submarine warfare in the Atlantic, which is one of my most extensive videos so far. Thank you for watching and see you next time.